So Aleksey, my colleague from the curators spoke at length how to protect yourself from spoofing, but I wanted to talk about things much wider, so big picture, because internet was developed to take care of the fallout after the nuclear explosion, but that was the beginning. That's the reason why. So jointly with experts, I would like to discuss how to protect yourself, how to monitor it, and what to do with it. And now we have the panelists, Alexander Asimov, Aleksey Semenyaka, RAPNCC, Ignas Bagdonas, Equinix, and Martin Levy, Cochlein. And so first thing I wanted to say, the first question. So to what extent internet is protected from that's, for example, smaller regional operator starts to announce prefixes of Google or Yandex. Is it protected? Do you have any assessment as to what this status quo is regarding this? So let me begin. Start with this sad story, very sad story, because big operators, including Russian operators, big Russian operators, they have an exclusion. So sometimes they tune the filter, sometimes they don't do that. So I don't want just to do any finger pointing and then talk about all operators market in Russia. But there are some exclusions. And those who have these exceptions, so they can announce anything they want. And we watched the last year, Carbina, Wimpelcom. So there are operators. So that the thunder has not yet struck, but things are looking bad. So then the lightning may strike any second now. So maybe we should not exaggerate things. Yes, so there are white spots, there are bottlenecks, and so some filter, some don't. So there are holes in the system, in this fabric. There are holes, and this is true. But let's begin by saying that internet was built on the principles of mutual understanding. And even now, so this is the main underpinning principles of the internet's existence. So it is the supposition. The assumption was that it's not only kind of a technical construct, but at the same time, internet was regarded as it's a company where people work and as they express some logical, conscientious ideas. But in the internet, so we have something similar. So some others just respond to it somehow. Although accidents occur all the time. So then there's this trust story when everyone trusted Google, and then Google left Japan, yes, so without internet. So you remember this is the last year's story. That's a good example, good case in point. So when they internet via Japan versus Japan. So this is so whether everything is good, coming up roses or bad. So this is not very professional approach. I'm sorry, but. And I wanted just to talk about. So maybe this network of collective trust, not to turn into a collective network of problems and challenges, but within ITF and with the participation of other stakeholders and IETF, so there is still hope. That the situation will stabilize technically. That will eventually be able just to patch up some holes in the PGDP protocol, and to make it safer. Yes, especially for novices, so that they could have less chance to kill themselves and all those around them, This is true. Ignas has something to say about that. I would say there are two different. Sets of problems. So one set of challenges, it's so different things that appear as a result of mistakes, right? Errors made. And this is not. So this is something that's not made for a purpose. Mistakes that occur by themselves and without any. Yeah, certainly on one hand, so we're moving to automate everything. It could be a good solution. Mistakes not premeditated. But all the systems work on our data, and if data is compromised or incorrect, then the system won't work. The other set of problems as specific predetermined attacks, specific attacks, and the majority of these attacks. So they're not successful only, they not turn out to be successful only because in the whole network, so there is a pretty high level of total, general havoc and general system that so that gives results only when the majority of the participants participate, and if they do it correctly, then the system starts working. This is it's about education. So you know what filtering is in this conference room. You know how it works, but the majority but you represent only a small number of people who are involved in technical support, and you should not come to the conclusion that all others have the same level of understanding, knowledge, and professionalism. Certainly, there are many situations. And so then they read the documentation from the vendor, so to hire this team, and then you'll be happy. And also they hire this vendor's team, and then they are satisfied, but at the same time, so they damage others, so they do harm to others, and not unknowingly, because they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it, but unknowingly they do it. No premeditation there. But we're moving in the right direction eventually. But it's a slow, painstaking process. Yeah, with regards, yeah, yeah, with regards to small point about this education. Education is true. It's a critically important part, and so like the problems of so some of the problems that we have after Sasha's presentation right now. And so there is this good example that concerns our organization, RAPMCC. So you know the RAPDB database, it's our routing objects we have there. And I remember the times, it was 20 years ago, quite recently. So when we were supposed to do RAPDB filters. So that was common thing. So now it's not the case. And so then there are companies that do it at their own risk. They build those filters, but actually but now if they do that, they shoot themselves in the foot. And so we're not technical operators who write DB, so we cannot force you to write to tell the truth, because you give us no rights to do that. So to make sure that everything just is properly said there. And you immediately, so all participants, you contribute lots of stupid things to that, and it's a scalability problem. It's a problem of scalability, a problem of education. So just united together, just one layer upon another layer. It's not because you are stupid and don't have enough education from the viewpoint of the BGP protocol, but this is the mess. This is mess. This is because you have no time just to get to the bottom of it. You don't understand why you need it. It's a just terrible mess. And to educate a rapidly growing stratum of participants is a big challenge, and this which effectively at this level, so we cannot address this issue with this thing. And so this to follow up on it is education, but education not from the point of education per se that you could do, but you haven't done it, right? But you could have done it. So in the context of the growing amount of internet and participants and the expanding internet, it's a more systemic problem, I think, in its nature. Martin, please.
Thank you. You took me off topic from what I was going to previously say. Okay. So for one moment, I'm going to go back in the conversation and then forward. I have gray hair, for those that can't see me. I've been doing networking for a very long time. And we have, as a basis of the whole internet, protocols that were designed well before the size of the internet today. Who here, I mean, who in the audience knows who brought the first internet connection into Russia? Does anybody know who that is? Yeah, doesn't matter who it was. So I'm not belittling, but you know who it was. And if you needed to pick up the phone and fix something, you knew who it was. Who here in the audience runs an AS number and doesn't know me? Or doesn't know one of the other people that put their hand up? The protocol has not kept up with this growth. And everything that we have talked about, either at previous ENOGs or 10 minutes ago in a presentation or in other conferences, has been this catch-up. Because one of the most fantastic things about the internet and about the protocols is that they come from a process predominantly inside the IETF, but not 100%, but predominantly. And there is this phrase called permissionless innovation. The protocols that exist did not ask permission from the telcos or the fiber owners or the wireless. They were created by the type of people that are sitting up here or yourselves or others, and they work, but maybe not at this scale. So a lot of what you were earlier discussing, and I agree with, is this: how do we catch up? Whether method A, method B, method C, whether it is something that is missing or something that we need to collectively agree upon. Now, it's a very philosophical, airy, nice thing to say when I have the microphone, but no reality associated with it. So let's now make me respond with reality, because we want to make this go forward. Now I respond to what you just said. And at this point, I say, I'm sorry, you are wrong. Let me explain. The only way that the internet seems to work today is because we keep these databases of routes and we loosely, that's the key word, loosely use them to sort of stop somebody over there from messing up somebody's network over here. And by the way, as a few people were discussing before lunch today, I run a network that got messed up by another network not even 5 days ago. Explicitly with a route leak, explicitly something that actually only lasted 30 or 60 seconds on the internet between BGP announcements and withdrawals, but lasted on Twitter and other social media for days. So I have a vested interest in convincing you and everybody here that this is the most important subject. And you are easy to convince, if not convinced. But let me explain why I have an issue with what you said. Somebody has to be responsible at some point in the chain of saying, I will help, if not be the player that keeps an accurate, definitive list of routes, of owners, of who is allowed to announce here versus there. Because permissionless in this particular environment isn't working very well. So, as you are the RIR member on the panel, I push back at you and say, what you said, and I hope the translation was accurate, but it sounded right, is that you have a hard time keeping a database, an IRR database, an Internet Routing Registry database, clean, up to date. It does have a lot of mess in it, but you're not alone. You and every other routing internet registry has mess. But somebody at some point has to say enough and say, I will go to my membership, go to my users, whatever the right phrase is, and fix this and make it better. Because we can all measure the mess. So I throw this back to the second part of my response and say, somebody here has to start. And at the moment, I'm going to elect you as the RIR. And let's see where that conversation goes.
And so thus we can first I wanted to I cannot agree. I pray to differ. Actually, it does not contradict to what I was saying. I was not saying that that our information is stupid or just makes no sense. It's not true. But there's lots of examples so then a lot of stupid things are written there. Thank God, not always. So routing and databases is a very important part. And it works somehow, especially if there is enforcement there. So it works where to support so the actual data set information that is collected. They will talk about the responsible operator who works with his objects, and it always works. All those entries are important for traffic dots. So they're very important. The data was watched very closely. It happens in the databases. In the majority of cases, it does work. So there is mess there. Yes, it's true. There is mess, and the mess, unfortunately, is how to put it better. It's not point by point. It's kind of spread. It's distributed mess. But it's a problem, but not a catastrophe. And Martin, I'm sorry. Let's put it this: this is kind of it's kind of a stolen end of the conversation. Certainly, it's a good idea to say that we need just to go and sit down and fix it. And so the Sasha wants to take my mic, and so he is saying to say that he's the guy who's going to fix it. So in a minute, but let me finish. And another Sasha suggested there are other people. This is true, but let's put it this way. We understand this pressure on the part of RIR doesn't work. If RIR starts to do data membership and says, yes, so quick, file in and let's march. It doesn't work that way. Let's say the discussion works, exchange of opinions work, this crystallization of the problem works, identification, so creative understanding works. So it's a part of education to some extent. And when we've passed it, so then there appear the people with whom we can logically work, and we as IRR, so will be definitely so measurements will certainly contribute and help, always go along with them all the way, because we would be willing to go our part of the way, and we are ready to push this problem. But we cannot possibly replace a community. We cannot replace it. We can work with the community, and we're ready to work with it. But we do not replace community. We cannot create those who are going to do this. Okay, let's go back a little bit. And so we need just to find the root of all evil, and to prove and to prove this is IRR is the root of all evil. Let's prove that. And so whenever you add, a number of the system, if you're transit, you add to your set. Why? So why do you do that? In order to provide them a service, right? Not to protect them tomorrow, so to make sure that everything is up and running, but so that the top layers are added to their set and everything is up and running. So how often do you remove from your set something that has been added to it before? Let's see the hands of those who doesn't do it or does it very rarely or does it very rarely. So I will be honest. I will raise my hand. So I do not remove it. Don't change anything. So what's up? Randomly, once in a while, not constantly, and I don't remove it. And so actually, I'm just. So the ISAs become responsible to protect from links, hijacks, and so we. So we give it. This mechanism was actually built for a new system, for a new purpose. And so because the draft is different from of the system when it was put together. Actually, we delegate security, safety, security, because anyone can add your number to other NKK. So they can add, and the structural spread can exist. So what Martin was actually saying, only in the event when your security will depend only on your activities, on your actions. And this is exactly where we need to migrate. Protocol needs to migrate in this direction.
Protocol is only dependent on the data. And garbage in, garbage out, which is as old a phrase as can be.
I do agree, but
Go back to Russian, feel free.
Yes, I'm confused. Which language to speak? Okay, the problem is that it's true. The garbage in, so we always create garbage, a lot of garbage, but I want just to. So I want to be able to create garbage by myself because this is my own garbage. Yeah, so but when other players create garbage, that's what I hate. I want to do my garbage myself.
Я хочу быть ответственным за безопасность.
I want to be responsible for the security of my network. Very straightforward, very easy.
I understand that and agree. So let's try something new. Where can I send an invoice, a request for payment, when something comes into my network, which, as you know, it does, that I didn't ask for, that is not valid, that has passed through many different players, so I can send many different requests for payments? How do I process that? And I say this, of course, rhetorically, because we all know this won't exist. But think about that as the argument against that. You are in the same boat, you're in the same boat, everybody is in the same boat. There is, at the moment, because of the limited amount of filtering, quite a large amount of traffic that just doesn't need to exist. Now, we can also discuss this not at the data side, but at the control side. We can discuss this as the quality of BGP routing. Is there too many, too much deaggregation? But that's a different conversation.
Thank you.
So yes, that's right. But there is another issue. Yes, okay. We have right DB, and we have database of other. And we say honest. We promise that we'll behave well and we'll be writing only the right data. So if just we give a promise, solemn promise we give. But how to protect yourself from spoofing? So when announce some other numbers with the same valid addresses for this autonomous system, but for our own purposes. How can I help a BGP-SEC with RPKI? So if the BGP-SEC cannot help, I'm sorry, BGP-SEC cannot help. So it will be just, so ID is good, but no one applies it, right? Application is very little. No, BCP-SEC, so representative of the future, so future witness. So who is responsible for the future? Okay, yeah, because we are just in the presence of BGP-SEC. It does not have broad mapping. No vendor has it. So I'm not talking about the hardware, because no vendor added anything to it. So what? So how can possibly we, people who are more or less, while living in the present, but BGP-SEC, it's difficult for us to discuss it even, although we understand these workings. As RPKI, effectively RPKI. So in an ideal world, can imagine that when we have RPKI, imagine that we have good database, accurate, perfect, and everyone validate everything. So they check on RPKI, and everyone checks and validates so what they see in the database and what is coming in, and if it tallies or not. And this is true, but in an ideal world, it will work. In an ideal, but in reality, it won't work. And so, but why do you need RPKI then? because I, as a person looking into the future, I'll be very quick. So the future will be bright and beautiful. But before it happens, before this future comes, there will be a lot of mess and darkness and other bad things. BGPC SEC and other things related to it. So there is nothing bad. So there's nothing bad. So then talking about this, so they're talking about the academic community. BGPC SEC, at the end of the day, is an academic experiment. Yes, it's true. It looks like fully properly organized. Theoretically, it can work and can address certain issues that's supposed to address. Theoretically, it should work, but practically, if you look at it from this angle, everything looks different. Everything looks different. And so then there's a very simple thing, component aspect of it. So, for example, you would do the performance tests, how quick validation works. So if I can validate, for example, 50 prefix updates a second, then I get full feed, and then it will take more time for me until I validate everything. But during that time, so half of everything just will have changed several times. That's inside the system, and this is true. This is a wonderful mechanism that can address everything. But do we need it or not? Probably yes. Probably yes. But if we had this mechanism that could address, let's say, 80% or 85%, so 85.5 problems that we have, practical problems. But if it didn't work on some complex corner cases, if we had this approach, then I would think that such mechanism, such approach would be much more practical and pragmatic, and the vendors would implement it all, deploy it all. They will be using it. But when we talk on the vendor side, if I talk, so their answer is very easy. Are you ready to pay as much as it would cost once we put it together and become operational? And the answer is from the same operators is not obvious. So it's very confusing. Someone said yes from the conference room, but many say no. No, don't even think about it, because it's your problem, it's your headache. Do it. Otherwise, so we'll buy your platform, but we don't have to pay what your platform does for us. So we'll be so this is it. That's what they would say, and it works out. It's kind of a closed circle. Yes, it's true. We have all the protocols, all the mechanisms, and everything that and we have the database, and in the database there is trash, garbage. So if we put it all together, so then the solution, well, we look like we have a decision, but it's not a working, functioning decision technically. Well, all components are connected. Even if it could be operational with the data that the system has, no positive results will be able to achieve. So this is kind of closed-in cycle. And it's not obvious how to get out of it. Well, see, yes, IETF and other organizations for more than 10 years have been working on BGP-SEC, and it works out that many people just spent a lot of time and effort, and what we got, so kind of draft version, so not a semi-finished product. It's kind of working, but you cannot use it. So what's happening now, just to try to bring BGP-SEC and make it perfect and tune it properly, or say, yeah, it was a mistake or a victory, depending on your angle, and so throw it out and do it from scratch.
Your calculation of 50 a second is 4 and a bit to 5 hours to validate a new table, which is a non-starter as an operator. It just won't go anywhere.
And this is for the equipment that we have right now.
Data from 3 or 4 IETFs from Grow, basically on some reference implementation of a BGP-SEC performance on a rather up-to-date platform.
Yeah, up-to-date platform. That's important. Я на самом деле по поводу.
So I effectively. So there was this question that I didn't get an answer to. So I agree with what Ignas said. Regarding if you can filter a lot of simple things, and that's very useful to do. You can say so. There's looking for the silver bullet, It's not the method in our industry. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. But practical approaches work. So then RPKI story is exactly a case in point. To filter the instances, that is this syndrome of thick finger syndrome. So just to go around RPKI protection, so the bad guy, the miscreant, can do it easily. But in the majority of cases, and so this from my right, my left, so the people can measure sitting next to me, and they're measuring it. So I'll give, and Martin will comment on that. So the number of violations that we see in the BGP protocol that generated by the thick finger syndrome. If we can reduce it, we need to do it. So that's my approach. That was the basis of RPKI. It's not a silver bullet. It's not the attempt to protect integrity from miscreants. So the bad guys who are going just to tamper with it. And so then, and we were looking for some evidence, some evidence, and so to find this evidence, you need just to go through a huge container of trash, or just to go through a small box of trash. So certainly it might help to identify the cases when something is done with malice and premeditation, or without malice and premeditation. But it's very difficult to streamline them. The attribution of routing attacks started recently. So I knew that existed before, but the proven attribution of these cases is quite recently, when we understood it was a routing attack that was done by bad guys, and then they got this and this and this. So this started in recent years. So we do have such instances, but earlier there was only at the level of suspicion, general suspicion, no more than that.
Well, in fact, I'll follow up on what Aleksey and Martin was saying. Lately, I was accused of kind of depressive, pessimistic view on BGP. Partially, it is true, but this year, an event, something happened, which was very important in my view. For many years, we witnessed attempts finally to launch raw validation, what we call RPKI. Why is it important? Because it does not address leaks problem or malicious activity. It will only address accident hijacks problem, which is, the static leaks that is ongoing. What we saw in Russia recently, what touched upon Cloudflare with their services, fortunately for a short time, but this is a way of fighting. And good news is not that RPKI has been around for a long time, but the problem is not in this kind of digression, but it's a proliferation. Once this disaster does not proliferate, then it's not a real disaster. But if it, and good news, large European AMSECs, DATSECs very soon are going to drop invalid routes according to RAW. So it means that once you assign your addresses, so think about your own security, you will increase the chance that next time when an anomaly happens, it will not drag, all the traffic, all your traffic. It will not drop it, but probably will be localized. So I prevail that you really sign your address space. It is not difficult. Today with Aleksey Semenyaka, we shall be having workshop to help those who is not technically, confident. We shall be working here exclusively for the RIPE region, and in fact, RIPE has done a great job, and it is easy to do. It took me 10 minutes, and I think you will make it faster. You'll do it faster. It's a workshop for those who can go to the LIR portal. If you don't have access to LIR portal, then you can also come, but then you will be only watching behind our shoulder, But if you have this LIR portal entry, then you can do it today, right now, here.
I can do nothing but support that. It is the right direction. Let's talk. Sorry, actually, an update for you. AMSIX is now 100% filtering on RPKI data as of 2 weeks ago. So that is a movement that should now be stated to everybody running an internet exchange, or at least a route server on an internet exchange, that they should follow with this filtering, maybe first soft to measure, and then, which is what AMS-IX did, and then hard filtering using IRR and RPKI. And that is how it operates as of 2 weeks ago.
Ну, это, собственно, замечательная новость.
This is great news. So one thing is to say we start once, one day, but another thing is to say it has already started. And with the start of the active use, we get the new operation experience of raw validation. And so after hikes, probably we'll see some errors or whatever. Transit will follow.
So that's the key point here. You have invited people to a tutorial and said, oh, this is easy. Let me give you the other side of that. For every network in this region that is using a transit provider that is in some way peering in the major cities in Europe, such as Amsterdam or Frankfurt or London, but we'll talk about Amsterdam because I think every major network connects to Amsterdam at some point. If you, as a network, have not got a valid IRR entry, or now, more importantly, an RPKI entry, your route is not passing through the route server. Therefore, you are not getting the best traffic path. You may be going via Frankfurt today, but that will change soon, and somebody here in the audience can say when. And maybe it goes via London, or maybe it goes via Warsaw. But this is a trend. Even if we only have one data point, we can still say it's a trend. And therefore, getting accurate routing data is in the interest of the network, more so now than it was 2 weeks ago. And hopefully in the future that will continue. So motivation of saying, hey, we're running a tutorial, you should come, is one thing. Saying you're running a tutorial and your network will run inefficiently if you do not attend the tutorial, kind of makes the message a little stronger.
Мартин, спасибо за урок.
Oh, Martin, thank you for the lesson. It's always good to have motivation, a kind word and a gun. So it's a good joke. It's good to have a stick and a carrot, especially in our region. Good. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that RPKI and all of those things are kind of inevitable thing? So BGP protocol is grew so fast because the protocol is based on trust of the community members. They trust each other. And now we're talking about the things that restrict the freedom, so to say. Is it going to be an obstacle for internet development, or is it a necessary thing to do now? So what about the door locks? Do they restrict the people from, talking to each other, communicating, door locks? This is exactly this. We're not talking about, tools that do not stop people who actually live normally, build networks. We're not adding something. What we discuss is a rather cheap technology. BGP, what Ignas was saying in the future, for the present is too heavy a technology. What we discuss now, we are discussing cheap technologies, affordable. That is like a door lock. Yes, in order to visit someone, first you need to exit and then open the lock, lock the lock, and then go ring the bell, and they will open the door and lock the door behind us. But this is cheap, compared to the whole story. I would compare it like that. As for inevitable nature of the process, do we have? Arnold Nipper, I guess, is in the audience or disconnected. As DETSIX representative, does he have any plans I would like to know. No? MSKX? We sure have MSKX. Do you have plans to introduce validation? Alexander, Technical Director, MSKX. So we have been testing since last year, but our goal is to, polish it correctly, both in validation and with someone who did not sign or did not sign properly. So we want to make the tools which immediately will kind of help and explain that the way we handle any errors in road objects. So if we have some discrepancy or mismatch, immediately, automatically, we send a letter to fix it with a request to fix it. So recently, we discovered a loop in the ISSET description of participants. So things like that are important. And in my view, no less important than validating and creating awareness to those who doesn't do or doesn't do properly. So speaking about the accuracy of information at the right DB, we thank you. We watch this story when someone is there to control. Once you control, you get accuracy somehow. And in particular, those tools that you have locally will certainly help accuracy of the routing parts of the DB royal, though certainly the approach should be more systemic. And in my view of inevitability, I believe that the penetration will go up, but expecting that over the next 3 years, we shall have this technology penetrating close to 100% would be naive, in my view.
Close to 100 is, it's not quite attainable, but we should aim for it. I have nothing but good things to say about MSKIX. It is a hard journey to do this. You know this, I know this. But if you don't start, you never see where the end is. In reality, going back to a very early part of the conversation, what was a very easy network to join and to use has now become much more complicated. When you first set up BGP back in the 90s or the late 90s, it was very easy. And most of the time you just announced a route and it just worked. And we've now grown up, and that naive childhood must go away, and we must now build much more complicated systems. Internet exchanges for a large portion of networks are a very valuable gateway, a very valuable test, because if, for example, you as a member of an internet exchange get an email that says your routing isn't quite right, your routing registry or your RPKI setting, and it's very easy to do this even today. You can see these errors or you see success. You have a great place to start communicating with the audience. It's as important in a big exchange as it is in a small exchange. Sometimes in a small exchange you have more access to the members, and therefore you know the end users. But let's bring this back and talk about technology. I didn't get a chance to sort of say what I thought about BGPsec, but you basically said it. It's a great academic protocol, but as an operator, I'm never going to run it. It's too complicated, it's too, it is not built for operators, it is built as an academic exercise. So we now need to come up as a community through the IETF as the next thing to do. The trouble is we don't have the time. RPKI is nearly 10 years from the first set of drafts. In fact, I think it is actually 10 years, the end of this year. End of this year. Yeah, close. I mean, it was 2012 when it was RFC'd, so it's 6 years since then, but 10 years since the original idea. We don't have 10 years to go work on the next set of drafts. So in a way, this is just a simple statement. We need to buck up and do things, or use what we have today and improve it. But I'll go back and say, and I said it humorously, but I actually truly do mean it, this is costing us. You can do the standard e-commerce calculation is, if I'm a bank and I put my business online, but I'm down for 5 minutes, that's real money. And in any currency, in any place in the world. And so we have this need to, as a community of network engineers, to realize that the internet is not this sort of nice little playground, which it was 30-something years ago. It is now something that is used by just about everybody in the world. And it's used by nearly every company in the world. And so we don't get to play anymore. We actually get to respond to our customers and tell them why something hiccuped for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, and we can't afford to do that anymore. So that's just motivation in a different light.
У меня два комментария.
I got 2 comments about 100% and the attainable. Do we need actually those 100%? Isn't going to become an evil if we try to address the problem BGP and make new BGP SEC that will address 100% of the problems that we see? Will it be the same as, won't it be the same as we have and it doesn't work in the same way? It's not obvious. If we could have a tool that will address most, at least, well, say 80% of fundamental problems, whatever, well, the rest will be addressed somehow. If in the whole global network, say, let's call it critical mass, so that majority of the players would do validation, filtering, the operation hygiene that you need to practice, it would reduce the chances to those who don't do it, and the attacks would be much more localized, potentially with lower threat and damage. And then one more comment about the changes in BGP protocols and other things. Now, current internet is too big to change something without breaking other things, without damaging the rest. 30 years ago, we could replace BGP to something else that would address all the issues. At that time, we couldn't even foresee, we couldn't even imagine what would happen next. Now, replacing BGP to something else, to me personally, it doesn't look realistic. It's not feasible because we rely on BGP too much.
Хорошо. Еще пара коротких буквально.
And the short one, what should we do to those who don't have the objects? For instance, my exchange does not, well, it works in Europe, but it doesn't have RightDB. It uses RightDB as an alternative database. What should I do to the for some reason they don't use RightDB?
For name and shame. Because that is the only simple response to that. We have to use the community to convince the community to improve. This is a collective internet. And so literally having the ability to say who is signing, who has got good data, who has got bad data, and showing that to the world by the right method is possibly the only way to go with this.
Okay.
А можно я там
May I ask A question. Your hire operator, is it from the European region? Formally, yes, but they work in Europe and in America. Probably it doesn't have objects. They have AS, but don't have route objects in RightDB in other DBs in RadDB. Then, in fact, it is not a dramatic story, as we thought at first glance. No, they don't use RightDB. RightDB is a wonderful thing because it has authorization only for members on no external networks. So it means the same. Again, just writing is on the fence. Whatever you create, any object that's, and this discussion on RIPE about what we should do with the objects. And at least we can mark separately so that it would be immediately clear, should not be trusted, just like all others. And this situation when in various regions and registers have something and don't have RightDB is good, not evil. And if you have objects, if they have objects, it's good. So, as the question, was my personal question. So I'm happy to see the ideal case of interaction of community. And first, the community takes the mic and say, "Are you not? So what?" But then I can take that mic and say, "I agree with you." So it would be good to ask a question about the reason the objects within RIPE they are not in RightDB. Is it a religious? What is the reason why? From their experience, that RightDB has lots of garbage and they don't trust. Wait, they don't trust themselves. They don't trust RightDB. No, look, I'm not writing anything into my object because I don't trust RightDB. It sounds schizophrenic. Let's just put it off. I don't want to speak about other things. It would be good, somehow to sit down and probably ask us and discuss together, because it's a subject for discussion, but probably not for the wider audience. So second, should rear watch control hijacks and improper use of objects in their region, or probably MinGPMon arrange something else? Look, the history is like that. What I told, we should do what we are entrusted by our members. So what we do costs some money, and these money are kind of membership. We are responsible to our members, and as RIR, we see that this is a hot topic, and we are ready to expand our activity in this area. So the community needs to warm up and respond somehow to our working groups, to our memberships. That will say, yes, it is important. So you work more here, and your members will agree that you spend money here, and we would be ready to use working groups, and we are ready. But we cannot do it. It cannot be, our, lone cry. So it should be an organization, RIR, MCC, whatever, that will suddenly do it and succeed. It's not working that way. Then on the whole, I'm finished. Probably we have questions. Yes, there are questions. And Aleksey has questions. Alexander from Roscom Svoboda, not so much a question, just a comment. You see? So the question was, the topic of why internet is still online, why it's not yet killed. So the first problem, Jeff Morris, 1986, I guess most of the attendees here had not yet been born, but the problem had been solved by that time. So it is a 1.7 terabit attack. That's so horrible. At the slide that Sasha was showing us, I guess in Russia we didn't even notice it, except maybe some active users. Internet successfully addresses the problems, like one-time bugs or errors and one-time malicious activity. But it's permissionless. No one is asking for permission. There is no indication how to build the business. And it's either the reputation tools or economic. It's not technical, but kind of organizational, non-protocols, not engineering collaboration will address internet problems. But when we were discussing that we should probably do some registries, watch the quality of objects, we heard that. But in Russia here we have, for the last 2 years, the law on critical internet infrastructure, with a Russian copy of the RIPE base, RIPE-DB, that all operators use. That will be the proper one. That will lead us to the main threat, especially in this country, is the state. We all saw, Telegram chasing, and carpet bombings of Telegram. So RPSec or RKPI will support the internet? Probably no. Engineers will cope with one-time perpetrators, malcreants, but it's more difficult to fight the state. We have 2 Brits here on the panel, probably. And Ukrainian people, but probably they're catching up. And Alexander in Russia has in a difficult situation if he is from Russia. So I think the main threat to the connectivity is the state, but not one-time malcreants. And it's not RPKI, but some other ways to address it. Aleksey from Transtelecom, and to some extent, I want to join you and ask: Are you sure the problem does exist? Can we actually draw a chart in percentage? How much, was the share of the damage in internet in 1995 and 2000, 2010? Now, what's the curve? So the number of these companies who suffered, not because metrology in internet grows because people participation is business, and those who do business around it start talking. Look, this is the internet, and this is the flu, and this is the remedy, and it doesn't cost much. Why I'm so apprehensive of such things? Because finally you end up with, and I joy here. People come who perceive this world on a philological, on a linguistic level, because the words are similar, and say, you have a problem, you cannot address it. Let us help you. Question, tell me, is there a quantitative assessment of the problem that you want to address, replacing BGP by some other 3-letter words? Three-letter word in Russian, is same as 3-letter word in English, a 4-letter word. So we just discussed BGP. We have just been discussing, and well, how to put it? Should I put it properly? So, replacing BGP by some other 3-letter words, in this situation is unrealistic. I think that's exactly what we were saying. And speaking about the estimation, I agree with you. I haven't seen, and what I was asking, from the people who measured, some people told me they would provide. I would like to see the chart, the curve of those, of the scale of the problem. And in fact, we have, the common evil that we measure something, go see, we don't want the one-time measurement. We want to see the trend. That's true. So far, I have never seen, I'm honest with you, I don't know of any. And I cannot quote the favorite, Ronald Reagan. So the worst thing is what you can hear in your life. Yeah, you have a problem, I'm here to help you. That's true. And I understand. I share. There are flies and there is ointment. So let us discuss the ointment. Yeah, in Russian, the cutlets, the steak, Let us talk about the flies on this beef steak, Honestly, I don't have the trend since early 90s. I can give you a number, but it's going to be about from the joke, how many drops in the sea. I can give you the number and you go check. How many drops of water is there in the sea? But what we should do as a technical member community, so look for a solution. We need two solutions. First, that will cover 80% of the use cases, and we shall be confident that our networks and services have high protection level, and to live to see the first solution to be deployed. And speaking about this ideal world, it may be closer than we think. And I hope that in the short run, I myself and some colleagues will be able to show you a draft, only a draft, but with a good chance to become a standard that will cure most of the sickness. The question is, what is working? If we have a traffic on the pipe, if it is 1% less, it's not a problem for the pipe. But if this 1% belong to the Amazon, yes. If after that all the services went to the phishing site and the money followed, then the money is a problem. Stolen money. Do you think BGP anomaly is money? Yes, it's a good question. That's true.
You will look at the evolution in the network as it is, and it's an academic toy, and for 20 years it's been a toy. For the majority, before more people, now just what we're seeing now, it's an instrument. It's a business instrument right now. And that if a terabyte of traffic, terabyte more, terabyte less, it's not an issue. But the damage, that's reputational damage, financial damage. That's the problem, which is a derivative of this attack. And you will look at this trend, the propensity. So what's connected to the network and for what it's going to be used. And so then it's kind of scary, because we start thinking that there are lots of physical infrastructure, which we expect that it will work. We expect it to work, and nothing can go wrong with it. But it's a big question mark, because it's vulnerable. And I think that only because of this, even because of this, we need mechanisms. It's not even protection. It's kind of prevention. It's kind of use to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And the trend that we are seeing now, I'm not talking about the absolute numbers. It looks scary. It looks scary. And because the more we're relying on this, the more dangerous certain attacks occur on physical infrastructure. Okay, unfortunately, our time is up. So thank you, colleagues, for the discussion, and so we'll continue the discussion later. So thanks for listening. Yes, but it was good. Thank you.